about New Year's resolutions, getting your finances in order.
Right.
That's probably a big thing for a lot of people. Is that something in your profession that you've noticed? And
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a rush. 2 times a year. One's when school starts, and I haven't quite figured that out, but obviously New Year's, when people are like, okay, new start, new beginning. And so in that, preparing, because so often the failure in New Year's resolutions is that they don't pan out. And so then it's not a waste of time, but it can amount to such if it's not actually producing long-lasting fruit. So it's a matter of not, oh, here's what you need to do. It's what's going to be different this year, as opposed to everyone else who's trying, and by 4 weeks from now will be in the exact same place they were prior to New Year's.
Well, that's the same way it is with the people who are going to be fit,
Right.
resolved to be, fitter or live a healthier lifestyle.
Right.
And, I see the other correlation there, which is what you say, a lot of people aren't going to follow through. Like,
Right.
what's going to be different this year? But, if you haven't ever worked out in your life, you're out of shape, whatever, you make this resolution, then you go to the gym.
Yeah.
There's 100 pieces of equipment. There's
Right.
1,000 things you can do. There's 1,000 books you can read. At some point, it's probably kind of overwhelming where you're
Right.
like, God, where do I start? Who do
Right.
I listen to? I bet finances are the same way.
Absolutely.
So where do I start?
So my encouragement to people is you need to start with why. That's a book by Simon Sinek, which is a TED Talk, real popular, and it's absolutely true, because if you don't know why you want to get financially fit in the first place, it's probably not going to stick, because it's going to get hard in the same way that becoming physically healthier is going to be so difficult. And without a clear vision for why do I want to do this in the first place, the moment it gets hard, you'll stop. You'll go back to what's easy. And so you have to have a driver that says, okay, I know I need to budget, invest, get out of debt, a whole list of things. You're not going to do that without shrinking the change, because it's too overwhelming. So that's the term I would give someone. You have to shrink the change. You want to change, and there's a long way to go, but it starts with one step. Shrink the change. Your first step, I would encourage somebody, is write down why you want to do this. That's day one of your New Year's resolution, financially fit. Write down why you want to do this, because every conversation about money is really a conversation about what's truly important to a person. And I think that's really important to understand, because so many people think, okay, I'm physically fit, I've got great relationships, I kind of want to be good at money, but it seems daunting. It's like everything else ties into being good with your resources, making the best decisions, confident decisions with your resources. So that's why I say, take a step back. Your first step is to understand why, and usually that involves writing something down. And I would really encourage people to talk with somebody, not necessarily a professional, but a close friend. That way they can start to flesh out, what does it mean to be financially fit? And what's going to be different from you compared to the other thousands of people who say they want it, but are never going to get it?
Well, what if I'm, 30 years old, I out of college several years,
Right.
but, still living a college guy life. Maybe my goal is to buy a house one
Right.
day. It's not that I have bad credit. It's not that I have good credit.
Right.
It's that I want to be in that spot to
Right.
where, when I turn 40,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe I've realized this dream of, having a home, a family home, and I put my family in that doesn't even exist yet. Where do you start there? I mean, do you start by building credit? Do you start by getting out of debt? Where do you start then?
The foundation of every financial question is going to be, in today's setting, telling your dollars what to do and giving them a job, which the B word is budget. And a lot of people, oh yeah, budget, I've heard that. But the reality is, are you really doing it? Like, are you taking control of your money? Or are you letting it control you? Saying, oh, I don't have enough to do what I say is important to me. So that's why every first step involves budgeting, but then taking it back once more, and budgeting is never going to happen unless you understand why. In the case of, I want to buy a house. It's, okay, why do you want a house? Well, because my wife and I really plan on starting a family. Or we can imagine hosting parties, or hosting friends, or hosting other events, and just having that lifestyle. Okay, that picture is going to drive you to say, your first step is to budget and to nail down, what is that going to take? What are the numbers behind fitting a house payment or paying a certain amount of a down payment into our life? Because really, I think what we find is everybody, all of us, and everyone we know, has the power really to do almost anything they want. That's the beauty of the day and age we live in, except people haven't grabbed hold of that empowerment because they're like, I just don't want to sit down and take the time to do it. And that's what's the great news about New Year's. It's great news about what I do and financial planning in general is that, hey, this is empowering. You want to buy a house, you can do it. It's just a matter of backing into what's it really going to take. And it starts with budgeting.
So what do you say to me, the guy who goes, man, I don't get money. I don't know what to do. So I make a budget, then what?
Right. So to first recognize, like, I am not that guy is really important, because one of the greatest detriments to any financial plan or lack of planning, any person's finances, is to hold themselves relative to others. And so that first cut it out. It's like, you are you, and you know what's important to you. And that guy may say, I want to secure everything in my future, and I want to know it's taken care of. You say, yeah, the future is important to me, but I also understand the balance of, there's a lot of things that I can only do when I'm X age that I won't be able to do when I'm 65 and maybe can't do it anymore. So that's who you are, and you need to understand who you are in order to make those decisions better. The follow-up from, okay, let's say you get a budget, then what? It's a matter of creating the full plan. Okay, budgeting starts, but what is a budget actually telling you to do? Well, within a budget, you're able to create the space of saying, hey, I said it's important to buy a house. I said it's important that I don't want to have to work forever. And I think, our generation is changing and saying, let's not say, oh, we're going to retire and golf every single day, but let's change and bring flexibility into our lives as soon as possible to work in the way we want. I think that's really empowering. I think it's awesome to pursue even now at this stage of our lives. It's to be clear about what you want, but then to say, let's apply those big goals and put them in budget terms. And that way you say, hey, I'm allocating X amount of dollars to going out with friends and just having a good time this month. But it's not going to be twice that, because I know that other money is dedicated to making sure I can buy that house that my wife and I are trying to get. And that's when, okay, then you start a broader conversation of, I've saved that money. Where do we save it? How do we plan for it? What's the time frame? And that's where it does get, okay, somewhat overwhelming, and that's where help can really come in handy, to help someone just sit down and get clarity about it all, and then help them say, it's a big picture, but let's shrink the change. You don't have to worry every day of your life when you go out later to say, what am I going to have for lunch? What's the story? What do I need to be thinking about as I make this decision? You say, no, my decision is, I know I have X amount of dollars to spend on my lunch today, because I said in my budget, I want this amount of dollars to go towards this bigger goal I said was important to me. So it's a matter of taking the budget as a part of the bigger plan that's going to dictate your daily decisions, so you can see clearly, hey, this decision is easy because I know what's important to me, so I know I'm going to get the half order today, or whatever else decision that might be.
How do I stay on track with this one? How do I keep from getting off of my budget? How do I don't know, reward myself in a way that makes me want to stay up with this and keep going February, March, April, May, until I have a year behind me where it was like, wow, I did it.
Right.
I did well this year.
Yeah. First, at risk of being repetitive, it is understanding clearly why you're doing it. And when you have that at the core of every decision you make, it gets a lot easier come February, March, April. The other part is to steal a quote from Dave Ramsey, who's one of the most well-known financial planning gurus in America. And he says and he stole this quote from someone else. The only difference between who you are today and who you are tomorrow is the books you read and the people you meet. And that has been true in my life, those two things. And I'd say you need to be sure to get them both if you can, but at least get one of them. There's a number of books that could encourage anyone who has this goal of, I want to be financially better with myself in 2016. Number two is, there are so many people who have been there and gone through it that are so open. Like, yeah, I'll have a conversation as long as your intentions are you want to do well for yourself and you actually want to make a difference. I'll absolutely talk to you. From my business perspective, hey, that's what I do for a living, so it's really exciting because a lot of people have that demand. Another something I'm doing within the business, because okay, it's daunting to think about paying for something you're like, oh, I should be empowered to do this personally. Like, I'm going to do a Google Hangout on air once a month. That would somebody say, well, I don't want to engage really a financial advisor because that's daunting, but I want someone to help give me guidance. I'm going to start that. So once a month for an hour, kind of like a call-in radio show, except just locally. I imagine there'll be dozen max people on it. Hey, you can get a certified financial professional to give you some guidance on your particular question for nothing, with
awesome.
no string attached. Like that makes me feel good, because financial planning is a professional service that can get very expensive, but at the same time, you want to help cast a line to those who are trying to get to that place where they could even engage that in the first place. Exactly. So just resources like that, and that's not, there's so much of that available that I think you engage that, that's going to be the difference maker in saying, no, I've tried it before and I failed, it's just not for me. It is for you, because you know there's things that are important to you want to accomplish.
Well, I guess my final question, is there anything we didn't hit on that you think we should?
I want to warn people, and you may not include this in the story or not, but the other part about getting help financially, particularly when you start talking about investing, is being aware of what you pay for advice. Because this is an interesting industry where it's kind of a sales industry. Guys is a professional industry. And that's one of the big reasons I made a business change. It's like, let's be clear here. Like, you need to know what you're paying. It's a valuable service, but know what you're paying. And that applies to everyone who, everyone who's participating in the KNPN retirement plan. Like, you need to know the expenses in there, because ultimately that's money that is yours. And it may be somewhat out of your control in that circumstance, but it's absolutely important. And especially for us younger guys, those expenses compound. And so you know what you're paying, and be clear about how much you're getting for what you're giving away. And so many people have no idea what they're paying for either investment or financial advice. It's sad. So that's my last word.